blockchain is going to be a very important element in building wisdom for future generations. So you're most welcome, Olinga. No, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Marcelo. And wonderful. Listen, whether how many people join and don't listen to us or listen, your intention is perfectly good. And all these things are long journeys that will take time for this to get some traction. So your guidance for this quick 20 minutes was that there's 3 questions you posed, and I'm going to be true to your guidance and kind of address them. And the first question was is there someone who has inspired you in your past in terms of passing on wisdom? And interestingly, for me, it wasn't a person, it was actually a film. And some of you, the older ones will relate, but the younger ones, if any of the ones people listening are younger, will understand this. A few years ago, in 2014, I had the privilege to give a speech at the Vatican. And it was something I'd done in impact measurement, which we measure love and happiness and hope and gratitude and kindness. And it had become, I guess, kind of viral, and it became the biggest impact analysis technique in the world. And the Vatican called it the God metric, which was a kind of gift from heaven, to be honest to you. And so they asked me to speak at the Vatican, and it was a wonderful event for me. And during that speech, I had the audacity to quote from a Denzel Washington film. And in that film, it's called Training Day, which won many Oscars, but it kind of captured my life quite adequately and well. And Denzel Washington is effectively actually a corrupt cop, but he's a hard ass, and he's a tough guy. And he said the sentence, which was resonated with my life. There are many models of leading our lives, and kids are growing up now are looking for, models, paradigms to replicate, and they look to Mark Zuckerberg, and they look for, Jeff Bezos, and so on and so on. And so they heroes and heroines that they can lead and emulate. And of course, there are religious models, where you can be, kindness is key to everything you do, and love is key to everything you do. And there are financial models where people try to get rich. And I was brought up in a way that I had to give back to society. It was in my DNA, in my code. And the model that I chose was to play the system in order to contribute and change the system. And in this film of Denzel Washington, he says, to protect the sheep, you have to catch the wolf. And to catch the wolf, you got to be a wolf. And that was, for me, when I heard it in this film, I thought, yeah, that is, I'm not telling you it's right, I'm not telling you it's wrong, but it's how I lead my life. And that it's a paradigm that says you don't have to be a sheep, and there's nothing wrong. In fact, it's very wonderful to be sheep, and fluffy and soft and warm. But also, when you're playing in a field in the world where people are ruthless, and I have met, many leaders of countries and huge politicians and super rich people with tens and tens of billions of dollars. And often, honestly, they're not very nice people. And you wouldn't want to emulate their lives once you've met them. However, I thought, if I was to say what's the person that reflects my attitude, it is that, it is Denzel Washington. And to protect the sheep, you have to catch a wolf, and to catch a wolf, you've got to be a wolf. So you've got to be equally as hard ass, frankly, in order to change the world. So that is just one way to kind of reflect on the world. I think the second thing that the second question you asked in the setup for these programs was, what event has happened that changed your life? I am here in my daughter's flat right now, and you got to check it out. I wish I could take credit for this amazing environment. She lives in a kind of UV palace, and if you look, it's extraordinary. I have here actually, there's a skeleton next to me. There's all kinds of gizmos all around, and she lives an extraordinary life. And I guess the person who has the event that changed my life the most was actually something related to her, and it's a tragic event. Up to about 12 years ago, I retired when I was 48. I'm 60 now. And up to 48, I was driven. I'm going to put it dead simple without any salad dressing on. I was driven by power, and I was driven by money. And this attitude, this had a direct influence on my daughter, who had a couple of breakdowns in 2008. And ever since then, she hears voices 24/7. I mean, 24 hours a day, every single second of every single minute, she hears voices. That changed my life, her breakdowns and her pain that she had to live her life. And it forced me to abandon my so-called driven life, and where, I had thousands of people who I would be responsible for. And it changed me to try and understand that despite all the wealth, 9 houses, 7 cars, it didn't matter. It didn't change. I could not protect my daughter. And so I started on a new journey to try and understand not financial matters, but non-financial matters. I understood the currency of finance is $1, but I didn't understand the currency of intangible matters, of love, of happiness and hope. Now, this unusually has a very happy ending for me, but not for my daughter. And happy ending is that at the age of 60, I am now the happiest I have been since the age of 11, which is before the age of some of the kids who were hoping possibly for us that we could share our wisdom with. And that when I was 11, I was super happy, had hope and ambition. And then it was downhill all the way after that. And at the age of 60, I have now discovered the same happiness when I was 11. And every second I breathe is wonderful. And everything I come across, I appreciate. And I'm still learning. And there's been like 50 years of effectively in the wilderness. So that is, I guess, the event that changed my life. And that the suggestion to some of our teenage audience, if they are listening, is that it's nothing wrong with running after money, nothing wrong with running after power and glory, but it isn't everything. And you have to, it's a trade-offs often between happiness or that. And I am so happy that I've made that transition across. And it's only because of my daughter that woke me up to the way I was leading my life. And then finally, I think you asked also for a joke that appropriate joke that that inspired me to think about wisdom and so on. And I have some great jokes, but I'm not going to, but probably mostly inappropriate. But something that happened to me a couple of years ago. So although I do this stuff in China and around the world and blah, 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 and we have, 170,000 followers in what we do, I spend most of my time in retirement actually working with my hands. I love renovating buildings for social causes, so I'll buy churches and I'll renovate them completely and turn them into social enterprises of social purpose. And usually large, complex things. And I work myself with my own hands and put the toilets in and do the electrics. And, these are big projects. And in order to fit in with other mates, builders, I am usually effing and blinding, swearing my head off constantly because I want to be like them. I don't want to be a stupid professor from a stupid universities or on a committee with, controlling, up to 70% of a $103 trillion market. I don't want them to understand that that's my background. So I pretend to be one of them. And I used to go up to counters and ask for, this plumber's this and joints and etc. And one day this guy turned up on the other side of the counter and he said to me, "Can I ask you a question?" And I'm swearing away to be one of them. And he went, "Yeah." He said, "Are you a vicar?" I went, "What?" I've just been swearing all the, what? He said, "Yeah, are you a priest?" I went, "What makes you think that?" He said, "Because you speak like one." And, what it taught me is that don't pretend to be someone else. Don't pretend to live someone else's life and walk in their shoes. Be genuine to who you are. Be honest about it. Do your best, but don't, because they'll find you out in the end. So that is not a humorous joke, but it's something that is a long life journeys of things I've learned. So that's it. I don't want to take up your time. And if the next speaker is ready, I'm very happy to hand it across.
I have a question. Are you a priest, though?
I'm not. I did have a religious upbringing. I belong to a small religion called the Bahai Faith. There's only about 7 million Baha'is in the world. And they do believe in all religions. So I was taught from a child, I had to learn, because children in the Baha'i faith cannot become Baha'is till they're 15. And so I had to read the Quran, I had to read the Bhagavad Gita, I had to read the Talmud, I had to read every holy book and often memorize them in order to make a choice. And that was the theory. It works to some extent, I have to tell you. But I did have religious upbringing, so I think the guy was very perceptive.
Thanks so much, Olinga. It's very interesting because I went to the Bahai temple in Haifa a couple of months ago before the corona hit. And it's just phenomenal, like what I did there. I don't know much about the structure of the religion, so maybe as the slot we have now, starting in 3 minutes, is for the kids to play. My suggestion is, if you do have the time and you're willing to go through it, is to spend maybe 10 minutes telling us a bit more about the Baha'i religion, where it's coming from, sure, and why you're attracted to it. And that's something that we're happy to promote in a sense of freedom of religious expressions, and not many people know that the Baha'i exists. So if you're willing to do that, we'll be very happy to hear more.
Of course. Of course. So, there are many great religions in the world, and many great religious leaders and prophets and manifestations, what they may call themselves manifestations of God. And we're familiar with Jesus Christ and Muhammad, the Prophet Muhammad, and indeed, when you have the honor, it was an honor to meet the Pope and so on. And so you meet people who are truly inspirational. And the one wonderment as a child is, well, how can they all be right? I can't get it. I don't sound like if I'm a Christian, but if I was born in the Middle East, I would never know about Christianity. So what? Whom am I to follow? The Bahai Faith is just only about 150 years old. And it's a prophet, a guy who claimed he was a prophet that came actually originally out of Iran, but Baha'is are persecuted now in Iran. And indeed, it says that there's a concept of progressive revelation, that revelation, that spiritual teachings are continuously the same throughout the ages between all these prophets, but that the material teachings will change depending on the context of the environment. So at the time, it was very progressive. So, it believes in total equality of men and women. In fact, I would say it favors women more. If there are 2 children you have, for example, and you can only afford to educate one, it says you must educate the daughter, the girl. And so it believes in science and religion being in complete harmony, and that one without the other is not a balance of truth. And indeed, one of the big buzzes I get now, I lead a magical life now, because in my retirement, instead of running around with 9,000 people, staff, and so on, what I now do is I measure love, I measure happiness digitally, I measure hope and kindness. Using this technology that Marcello mentioned called blockchain, I transact it, I can send it to you over the internet, I can send happiness, I can send love, and you can then deliver it. And so the projects that we're now involved in are, for example, to set up a bank. We're funded to set up a bank in the Middle East, where you can bank not just material things like money, cash, diamonds, land, but also other things which are assets which are valuable, like happiness and love and hope and kindness. And so this balance is something which drives me. So I guess the Baha'i Faith has been instrumental in my life. It inspired me because it made me understand these balances that we have to go through and guide our lives. I am a very poor example of a Baha'i. So because I was a wolf, and I'm going to retrospectively say to catch a wolf, all right, but certainly, when a couple of programs on the BBC and ITV many years ago in the UK came and said, 30 minutes of what a complete nasty guy I am, a captain of industry who did this and do that. And I remember my head of PR came to me and said, wow, can't you do something nice? Do something nice so I can report about you. And I didn't know what nice was. It's tragic, isn't it? And so I had to learn how to be nice. I had to allow myself to be happy. I had to allow myself to give love. And so despite many failed marriages, which, had a consequence, and as you can see from my daughter, had an effect on her, I have finally understood to some large degree what I was here for and what I'm here for. And so the Baha'i Faith is a religion worth looking at. It's because it's a very kind of modern religion, contextually. And, but really all religions are great spiritual teachings and something that inspires us all.
Well, one way of looking at this is that you can't really truly understand light until you've seen darkness. Right? Everything is relative. And it is important to understand what darkness you have inside. And it could be fear, it could be anger, lots of negative emotions. And many people just try to put them under the carpet and pretend they're not there, but they always come back raging. So a better solution is to accept the fact that we all have this darkness inside, that it develops with us over the years. Try to understand the wolf and try to tame it. No, make sure that the wolf inside is not afraid of you as an enemy, that you can coexist and find a harmony. So it's okay to be angry, but you should be angry against injustice. You should be angry against missed opportunities, and it should redirect its energy towards something positive. And if you try to ignore the fact that you have those elements, we all have those elements inside of us, you're missing access to this energy. You're missing access to very powerful tools that need to be understood before they can be controlled and put to good use. So it's a very tricky topic, right? You know, find
that
the
was
darkness.
perfectly said. Marcello, you should give in my speech. It was said, you said it better than I say it. And you're right, you know, it's, and in many ways, in this work that you and I are involved in blockchain, you know, the work we now do is to say, you know, let's use these fourth industrial revolution technologies like AI, Internet of Things, 5G, blockchain, not to nudge us to better buying, to buy, you know, to look at our behavior and to get us to vote a different way or to buy more, which is effectively, ostensibly, the vast majority of how this technology is used by Google and Facebook and Amazon. You know, but rather let's change it to nudge us to better people, to become better behavior, to a better world. There are kind of four big things now which are affecting society, aren't there? There is Black Lives Matter, you know, there is climate change, there are the pandemic, and now, of course, there's a kind of massive mistrust between nations, and it's affecting everything, affecting business and trust and so on, and hence, you know, the use of blockchain to resolve some of these things. But the point is, so my life in the past, since 2011, I set up a foundation called the Center for Citizenship, Enterprise and Governance. It's a not-for-profit. It's grown to 170,000 people around the world. It's, to my shock and surprise, it is people call it successful. And we do this thing of, you know, what is the currency of love and happiness, and how can we actually exchange it? And now we're coming up to solutions, as you have described, and we're coming up to, you know, a banking solution where we can change behavior and reward good behavior, you know, through normal financial means. Or you can change, you know, for example, I'll give you an example. You know, one big program we have around 5G. People don't know that, you know, with everything Internet of Things, you can now have code in our normal products, like our toasters and our kettles and our doorbells, which can, you know, actually, they have an attitude themselves. They can be ethical, non-ethical. You can have a racist doorbell. You can have a doorbell that rings, and the doorbell goes, well, I know my person inside is a racist, and the person outside ringing is a black guy. So the guy can press a button, but it's not going to make any sound inside. And so these are, you know, these are ways that's nudging us to what I would consider a not so great world. So it's important that we start nudging ourselves using these technologies into a better world, to have not a homophobic kettle, but a kettle that embraces diversity and so on. So there are many, you know, things that we do now, you know, and it's fascinating. I mean, what a gig now at the end of my life to now spend my life enjoying every second and talking about the very things I should have been talking about when I was young.
Well, you do realize that you have another 4 decades of your life in front of you, right?
Oh, please, no, it's been hard enough.
Considering advances in science and everything else. But it's been super interesting. I knew that you're going to have a very unique session. Any additional questions, I guess I'll ask. Mark, are you here with us? Because I can see you on the list. See if
yes, I am here.
Would you like to ask any questions or make any comments on this?
It was really interesting. Thank you. And I really like the wisdom about not trying to copy someone else, but be yourself. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you. That meant everything to me. Thank you very much.
So maybe Suli can share her opinions about your session, other than the questions she already made.
think this session was pretty thorough, and I don't really have any questions.
Okay, so it sounds like we're coming to a wrap. Thank you so much for doing an extra long session.
Can I just say something? One last thing. You know, this reminded me. I spent because some of the audience are young, and it's fantastic because you're the future. Honestly, despite what Marcella says, you know, it's too late for guys like me. But you are the future. And I spent many years doing what's called emergency fostering. Emergency fostering in the UK are where you take care of children your age from between about 8 and to the age of 21, only for a few days because they have had a very tragic event happen to them. And it can often be terrible stuff like sexually really horrific, or it can be violent or something. And my job was to take care of the children, to allow them to live for a few days before they go into the system. And you had to get to understand them. You had no notes. You just met them, and you had to make them live for 3, give them 1, a reason to live, and 2, you know, some hope of the future, because they've just had something diabolical, things which you cannot imagine. And sometimes you weren't lucky, by the way. Sometimes they would end their life, and it was hard. But those kids inspired. They never lost love, even for the parents who did this to them often. And they taught me amazing things. They taught me how to overcome tragedy. So you kids have got all the learning that you need already. It's already in you. And all us old people can do is pass on little bits to you. But go forth, do great things. I love you all. Take care.
Oh, thank you so much for joining.